as I was growing up, I knew about this car, a street legal dragster being driven on the streets all through Dallas, totally raising hell and running around in this area, which we call Gasoline Alley, especially back then. Some of the baddest hot rods on the planet were built within a mile of the shop here. Including like the original shop that I was in behind Phipps's was where a guy named Moose built the original Budweiser funny cars that were all the rage back in the middle 70s. But Mike Minette built this street legal dragster as kind of a FU, if you will, to the man, because you know, he just was young and full of piss and vinegar and wanted to have a good time. But I knew about the car as a kid through the 80s. And when I decided to start Gas Monkey Garage, I started looking for it. And that was like 2003, 4. I finally found it about 2010, maybe 11. Got it bought. It was yellow. It was totally just worthless and torn apart. And I got it bought and brought it back to Gas Monkey Garage. Well, then I got the TV show, and I needed the money, and I didn't have the money to restore it. So I sold it to a really good friend of mine, Chris Ito, up in Chicago. And he took it and kind of tinkered with it. He fixed some of the fiberglass, found some of the original parts, and kind of got it into the shape that it is now. It hasn't ran since the 70s. It hasn't been driven. The parts are here, but they're not quite right. And I got it bought. What's super cool about the whole story is Mike Minette, the gentleman that built the car in the first place, still has his same shop that he built this in right there on Reeder Road, which was one block down and across the street from my shop when I was behind Phipps's. So I called him up, told him that I found the car for a second time, and that I wanted him to come tell us about it, because there's some really trick stories to him being like 22, 23 years old and building a wicked hot rod like this that was not only this crazy looking, but also street legal. There's tales of him that live in folklore of running up I-35 into Oklahoma to go to car shows with a trailer behind it, like a little camping trailer. And, you know, just some of the tricks that he used to make this whole thing work out. The fact that it's got this big blower set up on it and the belt is spinning like crazy and everybody thinks it's blower. There's actually just a carburetor in there. So, you know, he wanted something that was going to be feasible for the road, have a good time, not overheat, and still just totally freak people out. As a matter of fact, in the magazines that I have some copies of, it's called the Street Freak. We know it as the Digger. I'm going to try to dig into why it's called the Digger. I'm not really sure. And but a two-seat, side-by-side, canopy, killer rear end. Just the ideology of what he put into this is absolutely amazing. I can't wait for him to get here and give us the stories, because they've got to be unreal. I mean, he was 22, 23 years old, raising hell, doing this on Forest Lane, which just around the corner from here is Forest Lane. And there was a cruising spot between, say, Marsh and Webb Chapel, where everybody cruised back then. And in the 1970s, when he was cruising this thing, Forest Lane was the #1 cruising spot in America. I mean, even above some of the spots that were out in California. So everybody came here. They came from all over the United States to cruise Forest Lane on the weekends. And this car's got super cool history. You can tell I'm excited about it. And we're gonna let him tell it in his own words. And then we're gonna tear it apart, and I'm gonna have this thing on the road, and I'm gonna drive it myself. Get you some of that. Get you some of that. Before we tear the car down, I wanted to get it straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Mike Minette is here, still right there on Reeder Road, where he was when he built the car, along with a whole bunch of other cool stuff. Mike and I met back in 2002, because he fabricated a I think even before that, you fabricated the back seat of my Harley Davidson. And then I came back to you and you fabricated a big tire carrier for my Gumball 3000 truck. But, you know, I'd known about this car growing up. I'd heard stories about it. By then, it was kind of like a rumor that this guy had this dragster car and stuff. But it was seen in some bunch of magazines and things like that. So, Mike, thanks for coming by. I just wanted to get, like, why did you build this in the first place? Were you just pissed off at the man or what?
Well, no, I just, you know, I was actually inspired by another car I saw at a car show. There's a guy from Irving named, his last name was Gillum. He had built a Roadster that looked like a dragster. It had a 409 Chevy in it, and I thought that was so cool, but I said, I want to make mine more dragster-like.
Yeah.
And he drove it on the street and raced it. He was killed in a racing accident. That's what inspired me. And of course, I was too stupid at the time to realize what a big job this was going to be.
How old were you at the time?
It's registered as a 73, but it probably took me 3 or 4 years to build it. I was unemployed a lot of the time. I'd been working at LTV, and you know, the old joke there is optimist is somebody brings their lunch to work. I was off and on. I was about to get drafted, and nobody wanted to hire me, so I picked up some part-time jobs. My best job was with Jack Dooney. And Jack Dooney was just a fantastic painter. People from the West Coast would come here to Dallas to get their cars painted and lettered. He did the whole lettering, striping, everything.
For the funny cars and stuff, right?
Yeah, funny cars and dragsters, oh yeah. I guess he was a lot cheaper than those guys on the West Coast, because I mean, over here at the shop where we were at, there was always funny cars and drag cars getting painted. Kind of a funny story, when he finally got his own shop across the highway, while I was building this, he let me paint the car at his shop.
Okay.
And I had got it painted back then. We're talking in the early 70s. It was lacquered. So I had all the body panels out in the parking lot on sawhorses, and I was color sanding the body panels. And this Jaguar drives up, and the guy gets out, tennis shoes, t-shirt, you know, no, just a average looking guy. And he comes over and starts looking at it, said, what are you doing, you know? And I'm explaining. Next thing I know, he's color sanding with me. And about that time, Jack Dooney shows up. He'd been gone. He gets out of the car and he walks over and says, well, I see you met Craig Breedlove.
Really?
I couldn't believe it, yeah.
Breedlove.
Yeah.
Wow.
World's fastest man for 20, 30 years.
back
Yeah,
then
he was the fastest man on the planet for a long time. He's just out there sanding away on the car.
Yeah, color sanding with me, yeah.
I didn't know who he was.
Couldn't believe
When
it.
you built the car first, it was black, or was it yellow first and then
Oh,
black?
no, it was black.
Yeah.
It's black gel coat and black paint.
And then at one time it got to be yellow.
Yeah. I'm trying to think the guy's name that car passed through, I don't know how many people. Probably 5 or 6 years after I'd sold the car, some guy calls me up and wants me to go down and get the title changed. It was still in my name.
You talked to the guy that we actually bought it from. The body mold was laying out in his field.
The buck. You made the
Yeah.
bucks to
Oh, yeah.
form the fiberglass.
Yeah.
They're probably still sitting in
Oh,
that guy's
there
field.
were so many jokes about that. That was a chicken coop. So I built the frame first, made plywood bulkheads and stretched chicken wire over it before I laid the plaster and sculptured the body.
Are you guys listening to what he's saying? You were like, what, 25, 23?
Yeah, I was a young man then.
And he made his own bucks to make the fiberglass, made his own molds to make the bucks, to then make the fiberglass. And for it to still be here, you know, like it is, and it's heavy. This is a heavy-duty fiberglass car.
You can walk across that body, yeah.
You really can. Just amazing. But I wish I'd have bought the bucks, just because it'd be cool hanging in the air. They'd be cool for artwork or something like that.
Oh, I had several versions drawn up of this that, you know, cut it off short and make a, you know, short street rod out of it too, you know. The frame actually has a bolt, is bolted together in the middle here where I could put a short front end on it if I wanted to.
Well, see, we haven't torn it apart that far yet, so I don't know.
But I never got around to that.
So what was the ideology behind the front end? Because it's kind of like a torsion bar setup, right?
It is a torsion bar.
Okay, and then at one point I think I read in one of the magazines that you had like little bitty disc brakes off a go-kart.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you another story. I wanted to get this thing street legal so I could drive it.
Okay.
I didn't build it to look at it. I drove this to Tulsa, Oklahoma for the Street Rod Nationals.
Now, is it true that you were pulling a camper?
No, I was pulling a trailer though.
A trailer?
Yeah. See,
That must
I
have been a
bought some
sight.
giant truck tires to put on the back to keep it legal. I had my slicks in the trailer and our luggage. Me and my brother went to the Nationals. And
you were running slicks with magnesium bear claws
yeah.
or bear paw. I said that.
I'm not really sure what they're called.
They're called bear paws.
Back at my old shop, it was crazy. You'd be working and somebody'd drive up, open the trunk.
Be some stuff
You're
for sale.
interested in buying this stuff, probably half of it was hot, I don't know. But I probably paid $75 for those wheels.
Well,
I probably didn't have $6,000 in actual money in this car.
Well,
It's just a lot of labor and trading and scrounging,
Well, I just found a set of bear paws. It took some quotes, and I had to reach out to the internet to find a pair. But they're 16 by 13s, the way they're supposed to be, 4 3/4, and they cost me $30,000 for the set for just two.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but I wanted it to be back to the original. And that's why I'm so happy that you're still just right up the street. It's so crazy because you helped us out a lot in the early days and getting Gas Monkey started and stuff like that. But I'd like to figure out some brakes for the front. Did you have to have brakes to be street legal or no?
Yeah, 4-wheel brakes.
You have to have 4-wheel brakes.
Now they weren't functional. They looked functional, but they were not. But it wouldn't be hard to do that.
I just wonder how much hell
There
I'm
is.
going to get when I
They're
go
still
back.
in there.
Huh?
They're still over there.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Awesome. That's really cool. Now, one of the weird things that I noticed that you had set up is we're running some coolers in the back and our radiator up here. Were you trying to circulate enough water or?
The car was on the ragged edge of heating problems, but those were Cadillac heater cores in the back.
Mm-hmm.
They had little scoops, and then of course the main radiator's right down there. And back when I built this, you couldn't buy a decent electric fan. When I was building this and other hot rods, you didn't just look in a catalog and buy, you had to make it.
Yeah. At one point you had the radiator standing up with a big mailbox on it.
No, it never stood up, but I did have a big scoop.
Okay, that's what it
The
was. I could
scoops-
just,
the
it was a black and
scoops.
white picture. That's all I
Yeah.
could see.
And testing, like I say, if I had a big enough fan, I might have been able to get by without that. But I made a cardboard scoop first, to make sure it's going to work, and then made a fiberglass scoop. That there's a bolt-on panel there that's removable. You can put a flat panel or what you've got there. Or that,
Yeah,
that
we don't
was
have the
made out of a
scoop.
flat. That was probably made out of my flat panel there, I bet.
Well, we don't have the scoop. I know Chris Ito, you came to the shop when I was at Phipps's behind him when I first bought it in 2010, and it was yellow and had a smiley face on it. And
Food Mart on the side.
Food Mart on the side.
I've never
of
seen
it.
such orange peel in my life.
It was pretty bad. And I wanted to build the car then, but then I got the TV show and I needed the money. Plus I wasn't going to have the money to put into it. So I sold it to Chris, and Chris really took care of it, and he kind of just slowly worked on it like Chris does. And I finally called him up a few weeks ago and I said, hey, what are you doing with that? And he was like, well, I'll sell it. But we got it back here. Now, a lot of the parts that go to the motor, you've got these reservoirs up at the top for
Those are surge tanks for the radiator.
Correct.
They
That would
got to be
basically
higher
be-
than the cylinder heads.
the blower motor whole shebang there is just for looks
Well,
because it's got a carburetor in it,
don't
right?
give any of my secrets away. But I'll tell you what, though. You're asking about the wheels. A lot of these parts, that bug catcher, according to old Benson at Hot Rod Exchange, where I bought that was off of one of Eddie Hill's dragsters. The headers over there where I had my shop, Mike Burkhart and Harry Schmidt and a bunch of racers, had their funny cars over there.
Well, these
And
were
those were
big
some-
time funny car guys too.
Oh yeah, and these were throwaway headers. Mike Burkhart gave me the two sets, and I cut them up and made one set of weed sprayers. Yeah, we call those.
Yeah.
Theirs were turned up to get downforce on the car, but
Some bigger names that were over there was Ernstein.
Well, you know, next door to my shop, the Ace Muffler Shop guys, and whenever they had a national event up the highway, Garlett's would keep his car next door. We would keep the freight train, that double engine fuel dragster. We kept that in our shop.
Well, who was it that was behind your shop, Phipps, that built the Budweiser car?
Well, now Moose probably.
No, here's the thing.
T-bar chassis.
Yeah, that was Moose. The Ace Muffler Shop, their driver was Kenny Bernstein.
Wow.
And I was actually standing out in front of my shop. They were next door when the engine masters came by and hired him away from the Ace Muffler Shop.
No kidding.
And now, you know.
Well, I mean, I wish, you know, it's getting pretty late and in the whole grand scheme of things, but there was so much that happened in this general area back then in racing and custom car building and everything that I wish there was a way to like write a book about it, because it's one of the reasons that I moved here. You know, Aaron that used to work for me, he goes, "Why are we moving into this shithole part of town?" And I was like, and I told everybody this. I said, because number one, this is the old gasoline alley, you know, whatever you want to call it, Rotter's, you know, road. But if within a few blocks, if you needed it or had a problem with it or didn't know how to do it or needed the machine to do it or what, there was somebody that had already ran across that problem. I came to you several times, you know, going, "Hey, I need a piece of this long, you know, this strength, whatever, tubing." And you're always like, "Yeah, okay, here it is."
Well, I remember when you had the print shop over there with a lift.
Yeah.
You had me look at something over there.
Yeah. That was previous to Gas Monkey. That was pretty crazy. But so what are we looking at? The rear end is, do you remember what year Corvette setup that is?
It's the early cast iron. I don't even know the exact year, but I think I bought that from Mike Richardson. He's a hot rodder, local hot rodder, and I had to widen the rear end.
Really? I don't even know how you remember all these guys' names. I don't remember what I had for breakfast today.
Well, at my age, it's hard, believe me.
When you were driving this and going up to like Tulsa to hot rod meets or whatever, were you just driving normal freeway speeds, or what's the fastest you think you ever drove this?
You know, I don't know. I never actually drag raced a car, but they had some cruise nights over in Fort Worth. We'd get on the turnpike and we'd go pretty darn fast down the turnpike, go to Fort Worth. I was always paranoid. Well, when we went to the Street Rod Nationals in Tulsa, I went through Oklahoma City first, and about 20 miles outside Oklahoma City, a convoy of highway patrol. I had them in front of me, and behind me, and beside me. They never stopped me. They were just watching, you know.
So the car's been named a few different things. Street Freaks. Chris always referred to it as the Digger, and even back then. So is that the name that you called it, or?
Well, we just called it the Street Digger, but
the Street Digger.
They're Dean Spruill.
Okay.
He was a photographer, and he did an article for one of the magazines, and he called it the Railrod.
I've seen that too, yeah. Railrod, Street Freak, Digger, Street Digger. We're gonna stay with Digger because that's your name, and you know, we're fixing to tear it apart. Now, we were looking at it. Does the back cab come off?
Yeah, it's not easy. You gotta stretch it to get it off, but yeah.
Because I want to take it down to the frame, double check everything. It's been a while, and then get it upright. Now, in some of the pictures, I also noticed that the wheels were kind of angled a little bit. They were never quite straight.
Yeah.
Should they be straight, or?
I had some negative camber in these because they are spoke wheels, and they're not designed to take side loading very well. You know, when you go around a corner on a motorcycle, you're
leaning.
You're leaning. Of course, I wasn't going to be going real fast around corners anyway, so there's not a lot of weight on the front end. Before I had a complete engine in it, I could actually lift the front wheels off the ground.
Wow. You put the headlights on the motor, doesn't that cause some jiggling at night?
No, that motor's solid mount. That thing has a shorty torque flight like funny cars used to use.
Correct.
And then it's just hooked up almost directly to the third member. The lights work great. The biggest problem is seeing around the blower. I drove it a lot, and but at first it's takes a little
Learning experience.
Yeah.
Now, I haven't found any pictures, but I do remember that it had like a stained glass back window.
Never had a black back window. I mean, it's got the window opening, but I never had glass in the window.
But that
We
doesn't
got
mean
it,
it wasn't
didn't-
there. There's other guys that had the car.
Maybe someone else that had the
Because
car.
when we got
done.
it, it had a stained glass black window, didn't it?
Dude, I was so excited I couldn't tell you. Remember, we had to put some of it together to get it out of the shop.
I tell you what, on our trip to Tulsa in the middle of the summer,
It's hot.
we roasted in the car.
What did you do for the side windows? Did they slide in half? It looks
I
like.
never had side windows either.
Okay, so these guys built some sliding side windows. I'm actually going to go ahead and hide some AC in it somewhere.
Well, that would be a good idea.
If I can get away with it. I mean, we've got a lot more cooling technology now.
Oh, yeah.
And pusher fans and puller fans and you name it. So I'm going to get on that. Now, the other thing that intrigued me was electricity, usually sparks and gasoline don't mix, but you made your gas tank and then you put a hole in it for the battery.
Right. Where else am I going to put it?
I don't know.
No, it worked out real good. It helped put a little extra weight on the front end, and as long as the cable doesn't fall off,
Then we're okay.
nothing's gonna happen there.
Right on. Well, what else can you tell me about it before we dig into
I'll
it?
tell you kind of a funny story about Forest Lane.
All right.
Back when that was a big cruise deal,
was.
that was the cruise place. Me and a friend of mine, Rusty By, he'd never been in the car. He's a big old boy. I was taking him for a ride in it. We went up Forest Lane on Friday night, and we're stopped at a stoplight at Forest and Marsh, and about 2 cars in front of me. We're sitting there, and all of a sudden, clunk, some idiot ran into the back end of the car. So I said, well, we're going to sit here till the cops show up, Well, we sat there for more than an hour, and the cops never showed up. Meanwhile, traffic had backed up to the next intersection, and people were just wandering around in the street like a party. That was a crazy night.
Well, Forest Lane was nuts. I mean, from what I heard, I was too young, but we had Cooper and Mitchell over in Arlington when I was a kid, and that was pretty crazy. But I wish I would have been old enough to go to Forest Lane.
What's the master cylinder off of?
Let's see. I'm trying to remember.
It's got Volkswagen pedals.
It does look like.
That's a Girling. I think it's just a Girling master cylinder because it's just got the rear Corvette brake.
Or did you put spacers on it? Because it's got some spacers on it to kind of get the wheel away from the actual caliper.
I think on the dragster wheels I didn't have to use spacers.
Yeah.
I think I may have even used those spacers as they may actually be adapters for the.
Well, they're from 4 3/4 Corvette to 5-on-5s.
Yeah, for the big truck wheels I put on it to do the highway driving.
So you didn't drive it with the slicks. You just put
Well,
some
most of the
truck
time I did, but when I decided to go to Oklahoma City, at Tulsa, I put highway tires on it because I didn't know whether I'd get how the police would
Exactly.
feel about it,
Nobody knew how the police felt back then. They don't know now. Now you can pretty much get away with anything because they just don't care.
Yeah.
But
The right ones back then,
yeah.
they didn't care. They made you pour your beer out.
Well, Mike, I appreciate you coming by and talking to us about it. I hope you come by a few times while we're building it, and
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have some questions.
Oh yeah, I'm glad that thing had gotten pretty run down, after I sold it.
Well, we're going to go all the way through it front to back. I'm sure my guys might have a few questions about your.
There will be. When we get it
you-
apart, I'd like to know if there was anything you would have done different if you'd have had the money. Little things like that, just little things like that. But I know Monday's your day off, so if on your way to lunch or something, if you don't mind stopping by, because we'll start taking it apart You know,
We're
you
gonna
can
tear it
see.
apart tomorrow.
He's a busy man, but
Well,
Monday's his
you
day.
got to remember, I built that thing about maybe, 40 years ago?
50.
Well, this is 23 and
50.
that's 73, so 50.
50 years, good grief.
You were building this when you met my dad.
Yeah.
Well, you're going for a ride with me in it, so, you know, be ready. I'll probably have you drive.
Them seat belts mounted to wood, or are they mounted to the frame?
No, they're mounted. No, I got to give credit to, wow, old age is popping in here. Guy that upholstered that, well-known hot rodder around here, but sorry.
Well, we got most of
Next
the
time I
upholstery.
see it,
Yeah, it's
I'll-
all. I think we have all the pieces.
We've got most of
Chris-
it there. I'm going to expand it a little bit on the inside and kind of shorten up your center console piece and get down a little bit deeper because I'm taller, but in general, I fit pretty decently in there. So, you know, I'm all right.
You're only gonna be moving it like an inch.
I know, right?
Yeah, there's not a lot of leeway, but yeah, you can change it some.
Well, that's super cool, Mike. Thank you for coming out, my man.
Okay, well,
Come by. We're going to try to have this on the road in time about 2 weeks from now, maybe 2.5 is good, guys. And what I want to do is tear it apart, inspect everything, throw it back together for running and driving purposes, and go to Good Guys with it, drive it there, and then we'll come back and tear it apart. And
I think that's the
chrome
smart
and
thing.
do
When you tear it apart, you'll have it apart a while, I think.
Yeah.
I'd take it to Good Guys first.
I think we're going to do that. Just get it running, driving, check everything, and then get crazy with the paint and the chrome and all that kind of stuff, and make it into. This is something I plan on keeping.
Well,
Yeah.
I appreciate you letting me come up here because so many cars I built that wound up in magazines, I didn't even get mentioned.
Well,
It's nice that to get a little recognition, you know.
Well, you're one of the oldest.
You deserve
old-time-
every bit of it, dude.
Yeah, you do.
You're like a legend in this area. So.
You are, sir, and we appreciate it. I want you to come by and you can wrench on it if you want to. I'll put you to work.